Hi again, everybody. This is Chuck Guglielmo, and welcome to another edition of Around the Town with Chuck. And today I'm very excited to have my son as a guest, Paul Guglielmo. Of course, many of you know Paul.
Right.
But Paul, why don't you give a little intro to those who may not know you?
Well, I know somebody. That's how I was able to land a spot on this show. Luckily, I had it inside. My background, I'm from Conneaut. I grew up living, I think, right down the stairs and then to the left of you. I've been here almost my whole life except for 1 year when I was a teenager. I went to Italy and I studied as an exchange student in Italy. I spent 4 years at John Carroll University then after high school. Graduated from John Carroll in 2005. Was in Conneaut then for a couple more years after that, and then I've spent the last 8 years of my life in Rochester, New York, upstate New York, right between Buffalo and Syracuse.
So what did you study at John Carroll University?
Psychology.
Psychology. Now, how did you end up in radio?
Well, there's a reason they call it a BS, Bachelor of Science. I ended up in radio because turns out if you get a bachelor's in psychology, there's not a whole lot you can do with that. What actually happened was when I was at John Carroll, I fell in love with the radio station. I remember when I was like a sophomore in college, I saw this sign in the dorms that said, want your own radio show, play your own music, and I thought, wow, that would be so cool. And so I went to a meeting. I loved what I learned in the meeting. I went and I did a couple of classes. You had to take a couple of classes to like become certified in it. And I loved it. I started doing it, and then the craziest thing happened is I started getting awards for it. I remember my junior year in college, I blew off the awards ceremony because I thought it was for the communications majors. And then they gave me a couple of awards, and so I thought maybe I should take it more seriously. And then the kicker was when I went and told my counselor my senior year that I wanted to go and I wanted to go into graduate school for psychology, he essentially laughed me out of the room and told me maybe you should pursue radio. And so I figured that out.
And you did a radio job there at John Carroll University?
Yep. Yeah, I did. Yep. The radio station was called WJCU, 88.7 FM. That was my first ever gig in the radio.
Well, we have multiple things to talk about with Paul, and you already mentioned you were an exchange student in Italy. Tell us what life was like over there, and maybe you can say something in Italian for us and then translate it into English, because he speaks very well Italian.
Va bene, piacere a me. I would love to. That's the pleasure's all mine, is what I just said. I lived there when I was 16 years old, so I was sort of too young to realize how scary that was. It's funny, that was half a life ago. I'm 32 now. So it's funny, I think about it sometimes, and I wonder if I would have the guts to go live a year overseas right now. Mm-hmm. And when I was 16, you don't know any better, So I went in head first, and I went, and luckily my parents were open to the idea. They were they understood how great of an educational experience that could be. But life,
sad too.
Yeah. Life, and by the way, I've seen him cry twice. I've seen you cry 2 times. One time was when I left for Italy. The other time was when this fellow right here passed away. I've seen him cry 2 times, this guy right here. He's got a big heart. He's got a big heart. But anyway, when I went to Italy, it was really a good experience because I had the opportunity to live there for a full year. And a lot of times people think of overseas, a place like Italy, for example, as a great, just oh my gosh, what a great vacation spot that must be. And it is, of course it is. It's a great vacation spot, but I had the opportunity to actually live there. And the point I'm trying to get across is that I had the opportunity to break through the threshold of vacation and actually live there, and actually just sort of live a regular life. And what I ended up seeing and learning that I think was most was that while it is different in some ways, it's the same in a lot of ways too. It's just people just trying to live their lives, just trying to raise their families, live their lives, pay their bills, the exact same way as it is in Conneaut or any other city in America.
What was school like?
School was different, shorter school days, but 6 days a week. That was interesting. So I think, it was like 9 to 1, but it was 6 days a week, but then occasionally it would go till 2:30. It was almost hard to understand. To tell you the truth, I had the best experience ever at school because they kind of just let me go to whatever class I wanted. I didn't really have a set schedule. And also the other thing about them is 5 years of high school as opposed to 4. So a lot less time spent per day in school, but a lot more time spent long term, 6 days a week, 5 years of high school. And they let me go to whatever class I wanted. I could learn anything freshman level all the way up to 5th year. And school was Here's a couple of very shocking differences. Now, again, you're talking about 1999. So this is, what, at this point, 17 years ago. Things may have changed. But in 1999, two interesting things. If you had brought, and still to this day, if you were to bring a cigarette into Conneaut High School, pretty sure you would be suspended on the spot.
I would think so.
In Italy, they actually keep chairs open next to the windows, so that if you raise your hand and ask the teacher if you could have a smoke, they'll tell you to move to one of the smoking desks and you smoke out the window so it doesn't bother everyone else. The other thing was, the day before vacations, like right before Christmas vacation, for example, the teacher is the one who brought the alcohol in.
Oh, wow.
The teacher, because there's not a legal drinking age over there. It's just at the discretion. Yeah, different, very different in that way.
Okay, let's get into radio now. Of course, like you said, you were in Rochester, but you actually started your radio career right here in Ashtabula County.
That's right.
Tell us about that before we moved to Rochester.
Yeah, I was very lucky. I was looking for a job right out of college. I graduated in May of 2005, and I thought I would try and apply to radio stations. I applied to 100 radio stations, not 99, not 101, 100. You might even remember all those big manila envelopes I had all over the kitchen table, sending them all over the country. I heard back from 2 out of the 100. Erie, Pennsylvania, Star 104, and Ashtabula, Ohio. And Ashtabula had this secret. They were going to launch a new radio station. It was a country radio station. So they brought me in and they told me about that in like mid-July. And we ended up, I was hired August 1st, 2005. We launched The Bull 98.3 on August, it was 8th or 9th of 2005, and that was my first ever gig, was nights on that country station, 98.3.
Under the name of Paul West.
Paul West, yeah. Yeah, they didn't like Guglielmo. I always thought Guglielmo would be the perfect radio name, because who invented the radio? Do you know this?
No, I do not.
The inventor of the radio, Guglielmo Marconi. So I always thought, why wouldn't they let me call myself Guglielmo on the radio? No, they didn't like it. Now they do, now I do. But back at the time, no. So Paul West or Paul Cash, those were my choices.
And you chose West. And then
I chose West because I knew I'd never have any cash working in radio.
And then from country, you moved to another one of their stations.
Yes. Yeah, what happened was there was some, the whole time that I worked there, I tried staying in their ear about pop music, top 40 music. I always saw this void in the area because you've got 96.5 out of Cleveland, and their signal doesn't quite reach Ashtabula County. Then you get Star 104 out of Erie, and they're fine, their signal does reach Ashtabula County, but they don't really, they claim Erie, they claim Pennsylvania. So I used to say, look, there's an audience there for the snatching. You can snatch this audience in Ashtabula County if you have a local station targeted more towards an 18 to 34-year-old audience, a younger audience. Unfortunately, management there was older. They didn't quite understand that. To them, they just heard that and they thought it was crap. Luckily, management there was fired eventually. And so I had the opportunity to then, we brought in new management, and that management saw it as a no-brainer. We did it, and we started showing up in the Cleveland and Erie ratings with 102 Zoo, 102.5. Isn't that a name from the past, 102 Zoo? Remember that? I remember when I was a little kid riding around with you listening to Gary Raccoon on 102 Zoo.
Yes.
And so we brought 102 Zoo on the air. We did pop music. We targeted people between the ages of 18 and 34. We did well. We showed up in Cleveland and Erie ratings, which is rare. Ashtabula stations usually don't show up in the Cleveland or the Erie ratings. And we had a good little run there.
Almost 2 years in Ashtabula?
Yeah, about that, yeah. Yep, just about.
And so from there you went on to Rochester. You are a producer of a radio talk show there. You also have your own show, a food and wine show. Tell us about those two shows, plus you're a DJ.
Yeah, it's 2016, so wear a lot of hats. That's the motto, yeah. So I actually, every morning, am on 3 different radio stations from 6 to 10 a.m. One is a live talk show. On that show, I'm a co-host / producer. So what that means is that I basically write the show and then also participate in the show, talking myself, and there's a host, and there's also a female co-host. And then I do 2 other music shows where that's that thing where it's mostly music, and then the DJ will pop on here and there and just kind of talk up the tune, you know.
What kind of music?
Oh, like top 40 pop music. Same thing as we were doing on 102 Zoo. Those are easy talkovers. That's something like for example, not too long ago the Golden Globes were on, And that would be something like, hey, here's Lady Gaga, you saw her at the Globe, she's an actress and a singer. This is where she got her start though. Here's Lady Gaga. You know, that would be like an example of a music station. I actually do 2 shows in the morning, those are taped. I tape those at like 5 o'clock in the morning in Rochester and Syracuse, New York. And then I do a talk show on weekends that I host, which is a food and wine show about the local food scene in Rochester.
And how's that going? I know you love to cook and everything.
Yeah, that's going really well. That's been a great opportunity for a lot of people who can't afford to be, they can't really afford the advertising. You know, it's difficult to market yourself. I mean, there's grassroots ways. You go out and you're in the community, you're doing samplings, you know, I do that. But traditional media, radio, television, newspaper, that's expensive and that's tough for a small business. So I really focus on that food and wine show on small businesses because it might be a 10-minute interview and I think it's great content, but it's also a 10-minute commercial for their business. And I love giving people that opportunity.
And is it a call, people can call in the show?
Yeah, oh yeah.
What kind of question, give us a sample of a question you might get.
Well, this last weekend did a show and a guy called in who owns an empanada. I guess you would call it like a kiosk or a hut or a shack down at the public market in Rochester. Now, the public market in Rochester is a beautiful little market. You've actually been there. It's where a lot of vendors come and sell. It's they cut out the middleman. It's farmers come and sort of sell directly to the public, their produce and whatnot. But there's some little areas where restaurant vendors can open up and they can sell. And so this guy named Juan, who owns this place called Juan and Maria's Empanada Stop, and he called up and he asked about marketing his empanadas. He wants it to be, he just wants better name recognition. Because empanadas are not all that, you don't see a million empanadas. You find a million diners, you know. Believe it or not, you find a million marinara sauces. But you don't find a million empanadas. So he wanted to know, how better can I get the word out about that? And I told him, first step, call a radio show and ask that question. He got that part right.
Well, radio, of course, that's your main job. And then in early 2014, I believe, you had a dream.
Yeah.
Tell us what that dream was.
Well, there's a lot of dreams I probably shouldn't talk about here on live television, but I think you're talking about the sauce dream.
Yes.
The sauce dream is a dream that you were there for a lot of, to tell you the truth. So I grew up in Conneaut, going every single Sunday over to my grandfather's house, your father, this guy right here, Pete Guglielmo. And when I was a little kid, it was just what we did on Sundays. You know, it was just, that was what we ate on Sundays. We went to Grandpa's house, church in Grandpa's house, right? When I got a little older, like high school, teenager, even college age, then it became kind of a cool thing. You know, because then I started, he would let me invite my friends over, I would have friends come over, and it just sort of became that I started figuring out sort of how cool Grandpa was in that time. Because when you're a little kid, although I will tell you this, I always knew Grandpa was cool because my parents, who you happen to be one of, were my parents. So, you know, there were rules. You know, I wasn't allowed to swear, wasn't allowed to watch rated R movies. I go over to Grandpa's house, guy's swearing up a storm watching HBO every day. So I was allowed a little bit more leeway. So I always knew he was kind of a cool guy, you know what I mean? So as I got older, I really started to embrace that. I started to realize, and then the other thing is I started to realize that he was old. You know, when you're a little kid, you don't really understand mortality. You don't understand that the people around you are getting older and that they could one day not be there anymore. And you know, when you get older, you start to realize that. And so I started to realize that about him, that he was older. And so I started to take a lot more interest in him. I started to talk to him a lot more, learn more about him. And the coolest thing about him was that he had this tradition that on Sundays, he made sauce. And everyone came over for sauce. And so it was one of the little things I wanted to learn from him. Will you teach me how to make sauce, Grandpa? And he said, yeah. We went out, we picked tomatoes every Labor Day for a few years there. Out at Mason's Farm in Springfield, and we made the sauce ourselves, and he really taught me how to make it from scratch. So for a long time, it was just a family, just something I did, just something I enjoyed doing, really reminded me of him. In 2014, early 2014, I had the idea to make it into a business. It was just, there were a lot of different factors of why I decided to take that step and make it into a business, but I got another job as a bartender. I made money, I socked all my money away into a savings account, and I decided to start this business. And I started it on August 9th. It's an important date in my life, right? August 9th of 2014. I started this business, and you know, Grandpa was still alive at the time, and so it was a dream realized because he got to actually see it. He got to go to Golden Dawn
And actually buy
it.
the first 2 jars.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I have a little announcement. Speaking of Golden Dawn, I'm doing a Conneaut only special on the sauces right now. So these 2 flavors, in front of you, you've got the marinara with sausage. This is Grandpa's original recipe. This is what we ate every Sunday. We've also branched out and done a couple other flavors. This is a spicy, chunky vegetable sauce. And then this is a creamy, cheesy, blush marinara Alfredo sauce. For a very limited time only, these sauces in Conneaut only, which is really only what, Save-A-Lot and Golden Dawn, as far as grocery stores, these sauces can be bought for $1.99. But that is a limited time. So, you know, you go out there and get it right now because they don't have an unlimited amount of sauce to sell at that price. That's going to just be for the first come, first served basis, $1.99.
And since we're taping this show, that would be the week of...
Yeah, I thought I already adjusted for the taping. That would be as you're seeing this, that deal is going on. So we'll say, what is
the week of January 20th.
January 20th, yeah. If it's, you know, January 20th, 21st, 22nd, the deal's going on, 23rd, 24th, all the way through the weekend. Yeah.
Okay, tell us about each separate sauce. You have a story on all of those jars. Share with the public.
Yeah, so these 2 are essentially the same thing with just one difference. The yellow label is marinara with no meat in it whatsoever. That's Grandpa's original recipe. But as you know, Grandpa used meat. So truly, the original recipe is really more along the lines of this one, the white label, which is marinara with Italian sausage. Not that it has big chunks of sausage in it, but that it is cooked with this flavor of sausage, real sausage. We don't use sausage flavor, we use real actual sausage. So that's the original. Then what started to happen is, as I started to grow the business, we would do samplings, tastings, we would talk to the public, and the public would always ask if we were doing any more flavors, and we would say, well, we're thinking about it, what would you like? And the number 1 answer was a vodka sauce. That's where this came in. Now this is not a vodka sauce, it's a blush sauce. Very, very similar though. Essentially what it is, it's a marinara Alfredo blend, creamy, cheesy sauce. That was sort of by popular demand. The spicy chunky veggie was inspired by Grandpa's garden. Another cool thing Grandpa did is he gardened every day of his life, or at least when weather permitted, he gardened. And he always had a surplus of vegetables. And once in a while he would throw all the vegetables in and call it what?
Chabot.
Chabot, yeah. So I sort of made this inspired by that. Now, truthfully, it's not his exact Chabot recipe. This is more of an arrabbiata puttanesca sauce. It's a spicy puttanesca. It's really what it says on the label. It's spicy, chunky vegetable. It's got a kick. It's got big pieces of vegetable in it. And
it's my personal favorite.
It's a good sauce. So it's a sauce that's intended for pasta, but that one right there you can eat with a spoon out of the jar.
All 4 of those. Now, expectations, you've exceeded those, am I correct?
Yeah, I'd say where I'm at right now, if you could go back and talk to me in August of 2014, I would have thought where I'm at right now to be, if I'm lucky, in 5 years. And we're there a year and just a few months later. So expectations have been exceeded. Like you said, originally, the first dream ever was just to have a jar to be able to hold and say, wow, this is actually legally produced and sellable. And when I was able to accomplish that, the next goal was to get somebody to really put it on their shelves. And then the third goal was to get it on the shelves at Golden Dawn, which was my grandfather's favorite grocery store, so he could see his own name and his own face, his own likeness on a jar of sauce.
And now you have it at your other dream, Wegmans. All over New York?
Yeah, Wegmans.
Upstate New York?
Yeah, upstate New York. Yeah, Wegmans is in the Rochester area, which is where I live. Wegmans is top notch. It's the store. They're everywhere. They are everywhere. And so I was able to get into Wegmans, and then they expanded me into Buffalo and Syracuse, which, if you're unfamiliar with the geography of New York, those 3 cities are right in a row to each other. Rochester, there's Buffalo on one side, Syracuse on the other side. Wegmans expanded me to every Wegmans in New York State, and they've recently expanded me to the Wegmans in Erie too, Peach Street. Also the Wegmans over by the airport.
And you just did a sauce tasting.
Yeah,
One of the reasons you were home this weekend.
Yeah, a couple of weekends. Yeah, exactly. Did a tasting, got to stand there and let some people. And interestingly enough, saw a couple of Conneaut people there too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Who were they?
Chuck Lawrence and Pat and Chuck Guglielmo, and Anthony Nelson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good kid,
Yeah.
Anthony Nelson.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's move on to a couple other things. One, you recently bought a house,
Right.
and you had excitement and you had frustrations in that.
Yeah.
Share some of those exciting moments, and then what was frustrating about it.
Yeah, it's exciting. You know, it's exciting. It's also stressful buying a house. I think anyone who's ever done it can speak to that. There's a lot of excitement because you're walking through every house you walk through. This could be your future house, and you're picturing where you would put things. But it's also a little bit stressful because every house has things that aren't perfect about it. You know, I mean, we're not multimillionaires, so we're not looking at mansions here. You're looking at houses that are within your price range, and so perfect is tough to find. What you make up in your head is that perfect house. It's tough to find that perfect house. So you start to have to make sacrifices here and there, and that's stressful. That's the stressful part. You know, we ended up in a house where I wish I had a slightly bigger backyard. Now the house is beautiful. I think it's a fantastic house. We bought a house in Rochester, New York, in a little suburb called Brighton, New York. And it's in a very nice neighborhood. Quite frankly, over our heads. We've got lawyers, kitty corner, and we've got doctors next to us. And you know,
It's always good to have doctors.
I'm a radio idiot. My fiance's a PR person, so we don't, we're in over our heads. But we were able to get this house in this beautiful neighborhood because it needed a little bit of work. Luckily, for a year and a half before we moved in there, we lived with her father, which was tough living with your in-laws, right? So we were able to save enough money to where we were able to put a roof on this house because it needed a roof. I mean, there was a reason we were able to afford this neighborhood. So we bought a house that needed help. Luckily, we had the money to help it. Put a roof on the house. We had to do a lot of work in our basement, and also it needed a brand new kitchen. The kitchen was in really bad shape.
You said you lived with your father-in-law.
Yeah.
That was about 18 months, a little longer than you thought.
Yeah, we thought a year at first. We went a year, and then we started looking for houses, and then we spent 6 months looking for a house. So it was longer than I thought. And he's a great guy, and it was great that he let us do that. I mean, we wouldn't be in the house we're in now if it wasn't for him doing that. But I still lived with my father-in-law for a year and a half, so I gotta make jokes, right?
Sure. Okay, now you have something else that's going to be really big and exciting happening for you this year,
That's right.
and that is?
Yeah, my lifelong dream of marrying Scarlett Johansson did not come true. So I am going to marry a girl from Rochester, New York, named Ryan Bouchard, who we've been dating now for about 5.5 years. She's been to Conneaut many times. And last summer, I asked her to marry me. And it was a sweet little thing I did where I had you and my mom, your wife, come and surprise us, and along with her family, so that after I asked her, we went to a little pizza place, which just happens to have meaning to us too. It's like our favorite pizza place. It might not sound that romantic on television, but I swear it's cute, this pizza place to us. So anyway, we all met there, and that wasn't, she just thought we were going to get ice cream on the Erie Canal runs through Rochester, so she thought we were going to get ice cream, and instead popped the question. We went over and met with family. It was a really sweet night.
It was a sweet night. And how long were you in Rochester before you met Ryan? Or how did you meet Ryan?
That's a good question. I was in Rochester, I guess about 2.5 years before almost 3 years before I finally met Ryan. And how I met her is, she was an intern at the radio station where I worked, still work. And she still thinks she's interning to this day. Don't tell her any that. But yeah, that's how we met. I don't know. She was just, you remember at that time we were closer in age too. Because we're talking almost 6 years ago. So I was in my mid-20s. She was towards the end of college. So it's not quite as creepy as it would be right now.
So how are the wedding preparations going? I mean, we're looking at what now, about 9 months?
Yeah, about 9 months till the wedding. We're getting married September 30th in Rochester. The preparations are right about where they should be. We're not really ahead of schedule. We're not really behind either. We've gotten some of the bigger things out of the way. We got our venue for our reception, and we got our photographer out of the way. We're this close to locking in our DJ. I'm not allowed to know much about the wedding dress, but from what I understand, that's almost done too. A florist. There's some save the dates have gone out. There's Truthfully, you're asking the wrong guy.
I didn't get a save for the
It should be coming in the mail any day. You're invited, I promise.
Okay.
I swear. But it's funny when the wedding is a business. You know, the fiance, Ryan, she's the CEO. I'm sort of like the janitor. I just, I clean up a few things on the bottom level, but she's sort of in charge, so.
Well, this has been fun, but I want to close with something. I don't know if I should say this or not, but you let me know.
Say it.
You're about ready to develop another product.
Yeah.
Are you able to share that?
Talking about new flavors of sauce?
I thought it was something else. Was it some kind of a barbecue sauce or something?
Oh, no, not a barbecue sauce. I think I'm going to expand the line of pasta
Flavors?
sauces. Yeah. Basically, I don't know how detailed to get because I'm afraid you'll be bored by it. But basically, I think that the right move for a next step for my business might be to expand and have many, many different flavors. Now, not every store is going to carry all the different flavors. A big part of our business comes from live events we do all spring, summer, and fall. We do festivals all throughout upstate New York, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Albany. We do festivals. And the festivals are where people will come up and they'll just buy like candy, jar. And having all those flavors available for that reason is good. Then, when I sell to stores, when I wholesale, which is really the major part of our business, is the wholesale business, you know, selling to Golden Dawn or Save-A-Lot, I'll bring them a menu of all the flavors. And no store is going to carry all, say I were to have 10 flavors at the end of the day, nobody's going to carry all 10 flavors. That's unheard of. So I bring them a menu and I would say my top sellers, which will probably always be the originals, and then I'll have my other 6, 8, 10 flavors. And then the owner of the store, or whoever does the buying, the merchant, the buyer, will have the opportunity to select a couple of other flavors there. They're called complementary flavors to the original.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank
And
you.
of course, your sauce is also available in a couple other places in Ashtabula County.
Yep, it's available at the Golden Dawn in Jefferson as well. It's available at the Golden Dawn in Kingsville, Tony Orlando's place. It's available down at Dawson's Bear Cave in Ashtabula Harbor. I think she has some. And that's about it, just throughout Ashtabula County, really most concentrated on Conneaut and Kingsville.
Well, a lot of exciting times for you.
Yeah.
We want to wish you the best of luck.
Thanks, Chucky.
And thanks for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much. Around Town with Chuck Guglielmo.
Around Town with Chuck.
My dreams have been realized.
As you know, that was Paul Guglielmo, and that was another edition of Around the Town with Chuck. And we'll see you next time.